On the eve of my engagement party to my fiancé, Brooks, our friends put together a mystery box game. Each guy put a gift inside a box, and the girls drew them at random. When I opened mine, there was only a thin slip of paper inside. Thank you for participating. Brooks rubbed my hair gently. Still as unlucky as ever, babe. Bryant, my best friend since kindergarten, lowered his voice too. It's just a game, Alice. Don't let it ruin your night. Then it was Michelle's turn. She opened her box. Inside was a pink diamond necklace Brooks had personally picked out, and a voucher for a couple's getaway to Maui, a trip I had been begging Brooks to take me on for 3 years. There was also a card written by Bryant. We will always protect you. I forced a tight smile and set my empty box back on the table. It was just a lucky draw, right? It was all about luck. Until I went to the restroom and overheard the coordinator in the lounge checking the guest list. Mr. Brooks, did we distribute the boxes correctly? The one with the gifts goes to Miss Michelle. The empty one goes to Miss Alice. Brooks gave a casual yeah. Bryant chimed in with a chuckle. Perfect. Standing outside the door, I quietly tore the paper slip into pieces. I'm canceling the wedding. This little game of luck they rigged? I'm not playing anymore. When I walked back into the VIP room, everyone was crowding around Michelle, taking photos. The pink diamond necklace rested against her collarbone, sparkling like a teardrop being cradled in someone's palm. Someone teased, Brooks, you have crazy good luck. If I didn't know any better, I'd think you were proposing to Michelle tonight. Michelle's eyes instantly welled up with tears. Don't say that. It'll make Alice uncomfortable. The moment she spoke, every eye in the room shifted to me. Seeing me walk in, Brooks frowned slightly. Why are you standing by the door? Anyone would think someone was bullying you. I looked at him, suddenly finding it hilarious. I was the one who got hurt, yet even my silence was treated as me throwing a tantrum. So I didn't move. Brooks' brow furrowed deeper. Bryant stood up first and walked over to me. He had gentle eyes and always seemed to look at people with a warm smile. Before I turned 18, I always believed Bryant was the last person on earth who would ever embarrass me. But now he bent down, keeping his voice incredibly low. Alice, don't make a scene and embarrass Brooks tonight. I looked up at him. Did I say anything? Bryant choked on his words. Michelle clutched the necklace, her tears falling faster. Alice, let me give the necklace back to you. I shouldn't have taken it anyway. The moment her hand touched the clasp, Brooks spoke coldly. Keep it on. Then Brooks turned to me. The game decided who got it. That's it. I let out a soft chuckle. The room went dead silent. Brooks' gaze turned icy. Bryant frowned. Alice, it's just a game. Do you have to make things so ugly? He stepped in front of Michelle, shielding her. His voice was still soft, but it felt like a cold blade pressed against my throat. Michelle has been insecure since she was a kid. She's finally happy for once. Can't you just let her have this? There it was again. That same old line. I couldn't help but look at Michelle. She was hiding behind Brooks, tears still hanging on her lashes, but the look she shot me was filled with a smug, silent triumph. A second later, Brooks stood up and walked over to me. He smelled of cold cedarwood. I was the one who chose that cologne for him. I told him it suited him. Clean and sophisticated. But he used to complain it was too subtle. Later, Michelle said she liked it. He had been wearing it for 3 years now. He reached out, trying to ruffle my hair like he always did. I tilted my head and stepped back, dodging his hand. Someone in the room gasped. Brooks' expression finally darkened completely. I'll be there for your bridal fitting tomorrow. I looked up into his eyes. You actually remember? He stared back, as if I had just said something ridiculous. When have I ever forgotten a promise I made to you? Just then, Michelle let out a soft cough. Brooks turned around instantly. What's wrong? Michelle shook her head. Nothing. My neck is just a little itchy. Maybe I'm not used to the necklace yet. Brooks picked up his coat from the couch and draped it over her shoulders. Bryant looked at my pale face and sighed. Alice, stop overthinking. Brooks is marrying you tomorrow. Michelle is just like a little sister to us. I looked him dead in the eye. Does a little sister accept a pink diamond handpicked by the fiancé? The smile faded from Bryant's face. Do you have to be so bitter? Brooks looked back, his voice dropping to a warning whisper. Alice, that's enough. Suddenly, I didn't want to say another word. In this game of theirs, even after being humiliated, I was expected to smile and say, oh, I guess I'm just unlucky. When the party ended, Brooks drove Michelle to the hospital. Her neck had broken out in a small red rash. Bryant stayed behind to take me home. As we reached the exit, he took off his scarf and wrapped it around my neck. The wind is cold tonight. Don't catch a cold. I stared down at the scarf. He always did this. Just when I was about to give up on him completely, he would throw me a tiny crumb of warmth. And in the next second, he would push me right back into the dark. Sure enough, once the scarf was secured, he said, "Alice, don't take tonight to heart. You know Brooks. He's cold on the outside, but he cares about you. He's going to your fitting tomorrow, and you guys are getting your marriage license the day after. You've already won. Stop fighting Michelle over these little things." I looked at him. What exactly did I win? Bryant froze. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out, because even he couldn't answer that. The next morning, I went to the bridal boutique alone. When the stylist pulled the main wedding gown out of the dust bag, her eyes lit up. "Miss Alice, this is absolutely perfect for you. Is Mr. Brooks joining us today?" I hesitated. "He'll be here." That was the very last time I would ever make excuses for him. But 10 o'clock came, and he wasn't there. At 10:30, his assistant sent a text. "Miss Alice, Mr. Brooks has an urgent matter to attend to. He might not make it today." I dialed Brooks' number. He actually picked up. But over the line, I could hear Michelle's muffled whimpers in the background. "Alice, I'm at the hospital," Brooks said. I gripped my phone tightly. "What happened to you?" "Not me. It's Michelle. She had an allergic reaction to that necklace last night. Her neck is severely swollen." I looked down at the wedding gown I was wearing. The corset was laced so tightly it made it hard to breathe. "Today is our wedding fitting." The line went silent for a moment. Then, Brooks let out a heavy sigh. "Alice, don't compare yourself to her. You're the one registering the marriage with me tomorrow. You're the one who will stand beside me at the altar. Michelle is sick, and I'm just staying with her for a bit. Do you really have so little security in our relationship?" A lump formed in my throat, choking me. Just then, a stylist walked over, holding a box. "Miss Alice, Mr. Brooks just had this delivered." Inside was a pair of off-white satin wedding heels. The heels weren't too high, and there were blister pads pre-applied to the back of the shoes. A card lay next to them. "Your heels blister easily. Don't wear them too high." Staring at the card, a sharp ache bloomed in my chest. So he did remember. When I was 18, the first time I wore high heels, my heels ended up bloody and raw. On the phone, his voice softened. "Did you get the shoes?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Be good," he said, coaxing me. "I'll come home and have dinner with you tonight." Before I could reply, Michelle's voice drifted through the receiver. "Brooks, is my neck going to scar?" Brooks immediately turned away from the phone. "No, let me see." The call clicked dead. I looked down at the shoes. The shoes fit perfectly, but the man who sent them never showed up. At 3 p.m., Bryant arrived. By then, I had already finished trying on all the dresses. Bryant pushed the door open, and when he saw me, his eyes widened slightly. "You look beautiful." He walked closer and looked down at my feet. His brow furrowed instantly. "Did you get blisters again?" He knelt down, pulling a tin of Band-Aids from his pocket. "Don't move." He applied the bandage with extreme gentleness, a routine he had mastered years ago. Once done, he looked up at me. "Does it hurt?" I didn't answer. Bryant stood up and helped me up. "Let's get in the car. It's freezing outside." It was pouring. He tilted the umbrella completely over my side, leaving his own shoulder soaked within seconds. I followed him to the car. Just as I was about to slide in, I noticed a white plush lamb sitting on the passenger seat. I froze. Bryant hesitated for a split second, then quickly held the door open, speaking in a casual, dismissing tone. "Just sit in the back." I stared at the toy. "It can't sit in the back?" Bryant went stiff. "Don't start, Alice. Michelle has been waiting for this toy all afternoon. So, I sit in the back and the toy gets the front seat?" He sighed deeply. "Alice, you're different. You're stronger than her." Tears stung the back of my eyes. But I reached out and pushed his hand off the car door. "Bryant, I don't want to be strong today." The warmth on his face vanished. "Don't make this hard for me." I smiled weakly. "You always tell me to be understanding. Why do you never tell her to be understanding?" Bryant was silent for 2 seconds. Then he said, "Because she actually cries." I nodded slowly. "And I don't." I hugged my wedding gown bag tightly, turned around, and walked into the rain. The downpour was heavy. Within steps, the back of my heels began to throb with pain. I didn't look back, and Bryant didn't chase after me. Honestly, it didn't matter anymore. 20 minutes later, Michelle posted on her Instagram. In the photo, the white plush lamb was sitting clean and cozy next to her hospital bed. Her caption read, "Someone ran through the storm just to bring me this. He said he won't rest until my pain is gone." I stood by the side of the road, holding my heavy dress garment bag, my feet completely numb from the cold and pain. The boutique assistant ran out, handing me a small paper bag. "Miss Alice, you forgot your veil." I took it. At that exact moment, I decided I didn't want to register the marriage anymore. But the next morning, I still went to City Hall. I just wanted to see with my own eyes if he would actually show up. At 9:15 a.m., I saw Brooks' car pull up across the street. When the car door opened, my chest loosened. I even subconsciously smoothed down my hair. Honestly, if he had just walked up to me and said, "Alice, I'm here," I might have swallowed all of last night's pain and pushed forward. But then his phone rang. Brooks answered it. I didn't know what Michelle said on the other end, but his face turned pale. In the next second, he got right back into the car and drove away. The sound of the car door shutting was quiet, but it felt like a sledgehammer to my heart. 10 minutes later, Michelle posted on Instagram. I told him I didn't want to be alone, and he actually came back for me. The photo showed Brooks holding her hand while she was hooked up to N4. At 9:40 a.m., Bryant rushed to City Hall. When he got out of his car, his face was lined with exhaustion, looking like he hadn't slept. "Stop waiting, Alice. Brooks isn't coming today." I stared at him. I saw him. Bryant was stunned. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he only said, "Michelle's allergy flared up again last night. She can't handle any stress right now." I asked quietly, "But I can." He frowned. "Alice, stop asking things like that." He stepped closer, his voice taking on a coaxing tone. "You're the one getting the wedding, the title, and the name Mrs. Brooks. What does Michelle have? She only has us as her friends." I packed up my ID, turned, and walked away. Bryant grabbed my arm. "Where are you going?" "The wedding planning company." He let out a sigh of relief. "To finalize the schedule?" "Yeah," I murmured. His face softened. "Good. Don't ruin the big day. If you make a scene, you're the one who will look bad." At the wedding planner's office, the coordinator looked incredibly uncomfortable. She pushed her tablet toward me to show me the screen. On the screen was a giant photo of Brooks standing in the middle, with me on his left and Michelle on his right. The photo was taken at Michelle's birthday party last year. She was wearing a white dress, holding Brooks' arm, looking like the real bride. I was standing off to the side, still holding the knife we used to cut her cake. The welcome sign had been changed too. "Thank you for witnessing our 10 years together." But why did our 10 years have to include Michelle? I scrolled through the itinerary. Everything had been modified. In our wedding vows, there was even a paragraph dedicated to thanking Michelle. I looked at the coordinator. "Who approved this?" The coordinator said timidly, "Mr. Brooks did." Seeing my face turn pale, Bryant immediately spoke up. "It's just the welcome area, not the main stage. Michelle never had a real family. She just wanted to feel included." I looked at him. "It's my wedding. Why does she need to feel included?" Bryant's voice grew heavy. "Alice, don't be so petty." Just then, Brooks called my phone. The moment I picked up, he asked, "Did you see the new itinerary?" I did. Michelle cried all night, saying she felt like an outsider. I had them add a few photos. I asked, "Do you think that's appropriate?" "What's wrong with it?" he snapped, his voice filled with impatience. "She's your maid of honor, and she's our mutual friend. You're marrying me tomorrow, Alice, not a digital screen." I kept scrolling. When I reached the jewelry confirmation page, my fingers froze. The note read, "Pearl earrings to be worn by Miss Michelle for the wedding promo video shoot." Those pearl earrings were a family heirloom left to me by my mother. Before she passed away, she told me she wanted me to wear them on my wedding day. It was my something old. I asked, "Why is Michelle wearing my mother's earrings?" Brooks was silent for a moment. "She's just modeling them for the promo." I cut him off. "Those belong to my mother." "I know." I let out a bitter laugh. "You know, and you still let her wear them?" Over the phone, Michelle started crying softly. "Brooks, forget it. I won't wear them. I don't want to make Alice mad." Brooks' voice softened instantly as he comforted her. "Don't say that." When he spoke to me again, his voice was like ice. "Alice, Michelle was just trying to help you test them out. Do you have to be so harsh?" I said, "Get them back. Now." Brooks didn't reply. Standing next to me, Bryant suddenly spoke up. "Alice, if your mother were still here, she wouldn't pick a fight with a young girl over this." I whipped my head around to look at him. The conference room went dead silent. Bryant flinched under my gaze, but he kept pushing. "Am I wrong? Your mother would have wanted you to be the bigger person. If she saw you making such a massive scene over a pair of earrings, she wouldn't be happy either." Slap. I slapped him across the face. On the other end of the line, Brooks roared, "Alice, did you just put your hands on him?" Bryant stumbled back, his hand on his cheek, his eyes wide with utter shock. Alice, I don't even recognize you anymore. I didn't answer him. I grabbed my bag and walked out. Behind me, Brooke's voice came through the phone. If you walk out now, don't expect me home tonight. I paused for a fraction of a second. Whatever. At 11 p.m., Brooks wasn't home. I sat in the living room of our new house, flipping through the wedding program from start to finish. My name only appeared twice. This didn't look like a wedding between Brooks and me. It looked like a celebration of 3 people. At 1 a.m., the front door unlocked. Brooks walked in, smelling heavily of hospital sanitizer. Seeing me still sitting there, he frowned. "You're still up?" I asked. "Where are the earrings?" He stopped unbuttoning his collar. "Michelle has to shoot the promo video tomorrow morning. They're staying with her tonight." I stood up. "Get them back. Now." Brooks' face darkened, the last of his patience completely evaporating. "Alice, I am marrying you tomorrow. What more do you want?" I said. "I want my mother's things." Brooks let out a cold, arrogant chuckle that cut like a knife. "She's literally just wearing them for video, and you can't even handle that?" "Alice, don't be so greedy." I stared at him, dumbfounded. To him, wanting my deceased mother's heirloom back was greedy. Right then, Bryant called Brooks. His voice was frantic. "Brooks, we have a problem. Michelle says the earrings are gone." My entire body went rigid. Half an hour later, we rushed to the hotel dressing room. Michelle was sitting in front of the vanity mirror, wrapped in Brooks' coat, her eyes swollen red from crying. The vanity table was a complete mess, but the pearl earrings were nowhere to be seen. I looked at the stylist. "Where's the security footage?" The stylist kept her head down. "The cameras broke this afternoon." "How convenient." I looked at Michelle. "Give them back to me." Tears streamed down Michelle's face. "Alice, I swear I didn't take them." "Then we call the police." Michelle's face turned pale. She suddenly stood up and made a move to throw herself against the wall. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have touched Alice's things. I should just die." Brooks caught her in his arms, and Bryant rushed over to help hold her back. The two of them shielded her, one on each side, keeping her safe in the middle. Brooks looked back at me, his eyes colder than ice. "Apologize." I thought I had misheard him. "What did you say?" "Apologize to her." He said it slowly, emphasizing every word. "She is already having a breakdown. How much further do you want to push her?" I stared at him. "Brooks, she lost my mother's only keepsake. She said it wasn't on purpose. And you just believe her? Do you have any proof that she did it on purpose?" I was speechless. Bryant pleaded in a low voice. "Alice, just swallow your pride. You've already won. Why do you have to make things so hard for her?" Looking at them, an overwhelming wave of exhaustion washed over me. Michelle was clearly the one winning everything, yet everyone treated her like the victim. So I nodded. I didn't want to fight anymore. "Fine." The dressing room went quiet. Brooks frowned, clearly not expecting me to give in so easily. Even Bryant looked stunned. I turned to Michelle. She was still shrinking behind Brooks, tears pooling in her eyes. I said, "I'm sorry." Bryant stared at me, his lips parting. "Alice." I didn't look at them again. I slipped off my engagement ring and placed it quietly on the vanity. "The wedding can go on tomorrow. Don't let me ruin your fun." I turned and walked out. Brooks looked like he wanted to chase after me. But Michelle suddenly clutched her neck, her voice trembling. "Brooks, it hurts so bad." Brooks immediately turned back to her, and Bryant instantly focused all his attention on her. In that split second, I stepped out of the room. By the time they looked up again, the door had closed, and I was gone. That night, I went back to the house and canceled every single wedding vendor, one by one. The wedding planner took my call at 3 a.m., her voice trembling with panic. "Does Mr. Brooks know about this?" "He doesn't need to." Before the sun rose, I dragged my suitcase and left the city. On the morning of the wedding, at 10 a.m., Brooks went to the jewelry store himself and picked out a pear-cut diamond ring. He stared down at the ring, his voice quiet. "She's loved this cut since she was 18. Bryant stood beside him, holding a long, black umbrella. My name was engraved on the handle. He smiled softly. "This should work too. She's remembered that rainy night when we were 18 for so many years." Brooks shot him a look. "You still remember that?" Bryant's smile faded a bit. "Yeah." He paused, then added, "She apologized way too quickly last night." Brooks scoffed. "She was just tired. After throwing a tantrum all night, she needed a way out." Bryant nodded. "True." He forced a laugh. "Alice has a soft heart. With you giving her the ring and me giving her the umbrella, she won't be able to stay mad once she sees them." But when the two arrived at the hotel venue, they found the staff taking down the wedding decorations. Brooks froze. Who told you to tear this down? The coordinator was shocked to see him. Mr. Brooks, wasn't the wedding canceled? The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was supposed to be a sea of white roses, soft candlelight, and the gentle hum of a string quartet rehearsing. Instead, it was filled with the harsh clatter of metal poles hitting the marble floor and the rustle of heavy silk being stuffed into plastic bins. Stop. I said, stop. Brooks's voice sliced through the cavernous room. He stood at the entrance, his tailor tuxedo pristine, the pear-cut diamond ring heavy in his pocket. Beside him, Bryant held a long black umbrella with Alice's name engraved in elegant silver script on the wooden handle. Both men looked utterly out of place amidst the chaos of teardown. The wedding coordinator, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, flinched. She clutched her tablet to her chest like a shield. Mr. Brooks, I'm so sorry, but we had no choice. The cancellation order came in at 3:12 a.m. Cancellation. Bryant stepped forward, his knuckles white around the umbrella. That's impossible. Alice was with us last night. She was upset, sure, but she agreed to the wedding. She apologized. Why would she cancel? It wasn't just a phone call, sir, Sarah said, her voice trembling under the weight of Brooks's dark, suffocating glare. She tapped her screen and turned the tablet toward them. Miss Alice sent a formal email. She CC'd the legal department. She paid the 50% late cancellation penalty out of her personal account immediately. She also… Sarah hesitated, looking between the two men. She attached a signed waiver releasing all vendors from any liability, stating the wedding was permanently called off due to unforeseen and irreconcilable differences. Brooks stared at the screen. The signature at the bottom was unmistakable. It was Alice's neat, slightly slanted handwriting. She had used a digital stylus, but the strokes were firm, lacking the usual hesitation she showed when making big decisions. She's bluffing, Brooks muttered, though a cold thread of dread began to wind around his throat. He pulled out his phone and dialed Alice's number. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again. He frowned, a sharp line carving between his brows. He dialed again. The same, mechanical, indifferent voice answered him. She blocked me, Brooks said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Let me try, Bryant said, pulling out his own phone. He pressed dial. Confident. Alice had never blocked him in her life. Not when they argued in high school, not when he forgot her birthdays because he was helping Michelle move. Not ever. But the speakerphone only yielded the same cold, robotic recording. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. She didn't block us, Bryant whispered, his face losing what little color it had left. She shut down her number. She deactivated the account. Just then, Brooks's phone buzzed. It was a call from his estate manager at the newly purchased villa in the suburbs, the house he had bought for their married life. Mr. Brooks. The manager's voice was frantic. You need to come to the villa. Miss Alice, she was here. Is she still there? Brooks demanded, already turning on his heel, his coat billowing behind him. No, sir. She left. But you need to see this. The drive to the villa was silent. The rain that had been lingering in the clouds all morning finally broke, pouring down in heavy, gray sheets that blurred the windshield. Bryant sat in the passenger seat, staring blankly at the black umbrella resting against his knee. When they arrived, the front doors of the villa were wide open. Cold air rushed through the grand foyer. The estate manager stood near the staircase, looking anxious. She came around 4 a.m., sir. She had a moving crew with her. They were very quiet, very professional. They only took what belonged to her. Brooks pushed past him, marching into the living room, then up the stairs to the master bedroom. The room was vast, but it felt hollow. Alice had lived with Brooks in his old apartment for 5 years before they bought this villa. Over those years, she had accumulated things soft throw. Blankets, a collection of vintage ceramic mugs, sketchbooks, and a small, delicate jewelry box where she kept her inexpensive everyday accessories. Now, the vanity table was completely bare. The closet, which had been half filled with her pastel-colored dresses and soft sweaters, was empty. Only his dark suits and crisp white shirts remained, hanging like solitary sentinels in the massive space. But it was what she had left behind that made Brooks's heart stutter. On the neatly made bed sat a square, off-white box. Beside it lay the heavy, emerald-cut engagement ring she had slipped off her finger the night before. Brooks walked over, his steps heavy. He opened the box. Inside were the off-white satin wedding heels he had sent to the bridal
boutique.
They were pristine, unworn. At the very back of the heel, the blister pads he had so carefully reminded his assistant to apply were still intact. Nestled inside one of the shoes was a small sticky note. Written in Alice's neat hand, it read, "They didn't fit. They never did." What does she mean they didn't fit? Bryant's voice sounded cracked as he stood at the doorway, taking in the empty room. She wore size 6. You bought size 6. I helped you verify the measurements. She's not talking about the shoes, Bryant, Brooks said, his voice tight.
He
picked up the engagement ring. The diamond caught the gray light from the window, cold and unfeeling. Suddenly, the front door downstairs opened, and the sound of soft, hurried footsteps echoed up the stairs. Brooks? Bryant. Michelle appeared at the bedroom door. She was wearing a soft beige knit sweater that hung off one shoulder, her neck still lightly pink from the allergy flare up, wrapped in a silk scarf. Her eyes were wide and filled with tears. I heard what happened at the hotel, she sobbed, rushing forward and grabbing Brooks's arm. The wedding, it's really canceled? Is Alice still mad at me?
I
brought the pearl earrings back. I found them. They were in the lining of my makeup bag. I swear I didn't steal them, Brooks. She opened her palm, revealing the delicate pearl earrings, the ones belonging to Alice's deceased mother. Brooks looked down at the earrings, then at Michelle's tear-stained face. For the first time in 3 years, the sight of her tears didn't evoke a protective instinct in him. Instead, a dull, throbbing ache began to pulse behind his temples. You found them, Brooks said flatly.
Yes.
I was so worried Alice would hate me forever, so I searched my entire hotel room. They must have slipped through a tear in the pocket, Michelle cried, looking up at him with pleading, innocent eyes. Please tell her I'm
sorry.
I'll apologize to her on my knees if I have to. Bryant looked at the earrings in Michelle's hand, then at the empty closet. She's gone, Michelle, Bryant said, his voice unusually quiet.
Her phone is
disconnected. Her apartment is cleaned out. She left the city. Michelle froze, her tears stopping for a fraction of a second before she squeezed her eyes shut again. No, it can't be. Why would she do that? Over a pair of earrings? Over a game? Is she really that petty?
Petty.
The word hung in the cold bedroom air. Bryant looked at Michelle. He remembered his own words to Alice just the day before. Am I wrong? Your mother would have wanted you to be the bigger person. If she saw you making such a massive scene, she wouldn't be happy either. The memory of Alice's hand striking his cheek suddenly burned, not with anger, but with a sharp, terrifying realization. Alice had never raised her hand against anyone in the 20 years he had known her. She was the girl who would carry stray kittens in the rain, the girl who would silently swallow her own grievances so others could enjoy their dinner. If she had slapped him, it wasn't because she had lost her mind. It was because he had finally, utterly broken her. I need to check the security footage, Brooks said suddenly, his voice sharp. He turned to Michelle. The hotel vanity. You said the cameras were broken. Michelle's shoulders tensed. That's what the stylist said. I don't care what the stylist said, Brooks growled, pulling out his phone to call his personal security team. I want the raw footage from the entire floor of that hotel from yesterday afternoon.
Now.
It took Brooks's team less than 2 hours to bypass the broken camera excuse. By mid-afternoon, Brooks and Bryant were sitting in the private office of the hotel's general manager, staring at a high-definition monitor. Michelle sat on the small sofa in the corner, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, her face pale. The footage showed the hallway outside the VIP dressing room. At 2:15 p.m., Alice was inside the fitting room. The stylist left the room to fetch a veil. A minute later, Michelle entered the room. The camera angle through the partially open door was clear. Michelle didn't look lost. She didn't look confused. She walked straight to the velvet box containing the pearl earrings, picked them up, and slipped them directly into the inner zippered pocket of her designer handbag. There was no lining tear. There was no accident. She then walked over to the vanity, deliberately swept a few makeup brushes onto the floor to create a scene of chaos, and sat down, waiting for the stylist to
return.
The room was deathly quiet. Only the sound of the rain beating against the office window broke the silence. Bryant stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He stared at the screen, then turned to look at Michelle. You lied, Bryant whispered, his voice shaking. You took them on purpose.
No.
Bryant, listen to me. Michelle scrambled off the sofa, grabbing his hands.
I.
I just wanted to see what they looked like. I was going to give them back. But then Alice got so angry, and she started accusing me. I got scared.
I.
Thought if I admitted I had them, Brooks would think I was a thief. You are a thief, Michelle, Bryant said, his voice dropping, filled with a sudden, overwhelming disgust. You didn't just steal the earrings. You sat there and watched Alice cry. You watched me say those awful things to her about her dead mother. You let her slap me because of your lie, and you didn't say a word. I was scared. Michelle wept, turning to Brooks. Brooks, you know me.
I'm
Insecure. I've always been insecure since we were kids. Alice has everything. She has you. She has the wedding. She has a family legacy. I just wanted to feel special for 1 second. So, you took the one thing her mother left her? Brooks's voice was incredibly calm, but it was the kind of calm that preceded a devastating storm. He didn't look at Michelle. His eyes were fixed on the screen, watching Alice's face as she walked out of the dressing room, the quiet, defeated slump of her shoulders that he had ignored because he was too busy comforting Michelle. He remembered her words on the phone. Get them back. Now. And his response. Alice, Michelle was just trying to help you test them out. You have to be so harsh. Brooks closed his eyes. A memory from 5 years ago flashed in his mind. It was the day they signed the lease on their first tiny apartment. Alice had cooked a simple dinner, her hands covered in flour, her eyes shining with absolute devotion. Brooks, I don't need a big house or fancy diamonds. I just want us to build a life where we always choose each other. And what had he done? For 3 years, every time Michelle cried, every time Michelle felt insecure, he had left Alice behind. He had worn the cedarwood cologne Michelle liked, because he thought Alice was too stable to care about such small details.
He
Had given Michelle the pink diamond, the Maui trip, the front seat of the car, and the center spot in their wedding photos. He had treated Alice's strength as an excuse to neglect her. Get out, Brooks said softly. Michelle blinked, her voice trembling. Brooks. Get out of my sight, Michelle, Brooks said, his eyes finally snapping to hers. There was no warmth left in them. No protective instinct. Only a vast, icy void. If I ever see your face again, I will make sure every client, every friend, and every business partner in this city knows exactly what kind of person you are.
I
Will personally ruin you. Michelle gasped, stepping back. She looked at Bryant pleadingly, but Bryant turned his face away, unable to even look at her. With a sob, Michelle grabbed her purse and fled the office, the heavy oak door slamming shut behind her. 6 months later, the coastal town of Mendocino, California, was famous for its rugged cliffs, towering redwoods, and the constant, soothing melody of the Pacific Ocean. In a small, sunlit studio overlooking the bay, Alice sat at a wooden workbench, a magnifying visor pushed up on her forehead. The air smelled of beeswax, polishing compound, and sea salt. On the table in front of her lay a delicate silver filigree brooch from the late Victorian era. With practiced, steady fingers, she used a tiny burnishing tool to smooth down a loose prong holding a pale blue sapphire in place. You're working late again, Alice. An elderly man with white hair and kind, crinkling eyes walked into the workshop, carrying 2 mugs of steaming chamomile tea. It was Arthur, the owner of the antique restoration shop where Alice had found a job shortly after leaving her old life behind. Alice smiled, taking a mug from him. Just wanted to finish this piece, Arthur. The client is coming to pick it up tomorrow morning. There's no rush, child, Arthur said gently, sitting on a stool opposite her. He looked at her face, which had regained its healthy color over the past few months. The pale, exhausted look she had arrived with was gone, replaced by a quiet, grounded peace. You've been here half a year, and I don't think I've ever seen you take a full day off. I like the work, Alice said softly, cradling the warm mug in her hands.
It's quiet.
When you restore something old, you aren't trying to make it perfect. You're just helping it find its original strength again. Arthur smiled warmly. And what about you, Alice? Have you found your original strength? Alice looked out the window at the ocean, where the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold. I think so, she murmured. When she first arrived in Mendocino, she had nightmares. She would wake up in the middle of the night, suffocating under the phantom weight of a tight wedding gown, hearing Brooks's cold voice telling her she was greedy, hearing Bryant telling her to be the bigger person. But day by day, the ocean air had washed those ghosts away. She had changed her email, her social media, and her phone number. She had cut ties with everyone from her hometown, save for her maternal aunt, who lived in Canada and promised to keep her location a secret. For the first time in her adult life, Alice didn't have to share her space, her time, or her emotions with anyone who didn't appreciate them. She didn't have to worry about whether her presence made someone else uncomfortable. She was simply Alice. Suddenly, the bell above the shop's front door chimed. Arthur stood up. Ah, a late customer. Let me go see who it is. I'll help you, Alice said, setting her mug down and wiping her hands on her canvas apron. She walked out of the back workshop into the main retail area, where glass display cases housed delicate antique necklaces, silver pocket watches, and vintage rings. But the moment she stepped through the curtain, her breath caught in her throat. Standing by the counter, dripping wet from the sudden coastal drizzle, was Bryant. He looked unrecognizable. The always neat, perfectly styled best friend since kindergarten was gone. His hair was messy, damp against his forehead. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his coat was rumpled. When he saw Alice, his eyes widened, and a sudden, desperate light flared in. Alice, he breathed, taking a step forward. I found you. Thank God, I found you. Alice didn't flinch. She didn't scream, and she didn't run. She stood behind the counter, her hands resting lightly on the polished glass. Her heart gave one heavy, painful thud, and then it settled into a calm, steady beat. The fear she thought she would feel upon seeing him never came. There was only a profound, hollow emptiness. Can I help you find something? Alice asked, her voice professional, polite, and completely devoid of warmth. Bryant stopped in his tracks, his hand freezing midair as he reached out toward her. The absolute coldness in her tone was harder to bear than a slap. Alice, please don't talk to me like that, Bryant pleaded, his voice cracking. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, velvet pouch. I brought them. I've been carrying them every single day since we found them. He placed the pouch on the glass counter and opened it. Inside were the pearl earrings. Her mother's earrings. Michelle took them, Bryant said, the words tumbling out of him in a desperate rush. We checked the security footage. She lied about everything. The allergy, the camera, the earrings, it was all her. Brooks threw her out of the city.
She's
gone, Alice. We cut her off completely. We realize now what she was doing.
We
realize how much we hurt you. Alice looked at the earrings. A year ago, she would have cried tears of joy to have them back. Now, she simply felt a quiet sense of relief that her mother's memory was no longer in the hands of a thief. She reached out, picked up the earrings, and placed them in her apron pocket. Thank you for returning my property, Alice said calmly. Bryant stared at her, waiting for the anger, the tears, the accusations.
But
Alice's face was like a smooth sheet of glass. Is that it? Bryant whispered, his eyes filling with tears. Alice, I'm
so sorry.
I've known you since we were 5 years old. I was supposed to be the one who protected you, but I became the one who hurt you the most.
I think about
that rainy day when we were 18 every single day. I still have the umbrella, Alice. I brought it with me. He pointed toward the umbrella stand by the door, where his damp black umbrella stood. Alice looked at the umbrella, then back at Bryant. Bryant, she said, her voice incredibly soft, almost gentle. Do you remember why I remembered that rainy night when we were 18? Bryant nodded eagerly. Because I stayed with you in the rain. I held the umbrella over you. No, Alice said, shaking her head slowly. You stayed with me for 10 minutes. Then Michelle called you because she had a nightmare and you left me the umbrella and ran to her. I walked home alone in the dark, my shoes soaked, catching a fever that kept me in bed for a week. Bryant froze, his face turning a sickly shade of white. You see, Alice continued, her voice steady and clear. You always thought giving me the umbrella was an act of love. But to me it was just the first time. You chose her over me. You did it then and you did it for the next 10 years. You gave me the cold silk of an umbrella while you gave her your warmth. Alice, I didn't know. I swear I didn't think of it that way. Bryant sobbed, his shoulders shaking. He reached over the counter, trying to grasp her hands. Please give me a chance to make it up to you. Just one chance. Let's go. Back home. Brooks is miserable. He hasn't slept in months. He's at the hotel down the street right now. He was too afraid to come in first, so he sent me. Brooks is here? Alice asked, her brows raising slightly.
Yes.
He has the pear-cut ring. He wants to marry you, Alice. Truly marry you. No Michelle, no games, no distractions. Just you. Alice let out a soft, genuine chuckle. It wasn't bitter. It was the laugh of someone who had finally realized how absurd her past life had been. Tell him to save his money, Alice said. And tell him the ring won't fit, either. The bell above the door chimed again. This time, it was Brooks. He couldn't wait in the car any longer. He stood at the threshold of the shop, his dark coat damp with rain, his face sharp and hollowed out. The arrogant, cold businessman, who always had everything under control, looked like a man who had been wandering in a desert for years. When his eyes met Alice's, his breath hitched. She looked beautiful. Her hair was pulled back in a loose, comfortable bun, and she wore a simple linen shirt and a canvas apron. She looked healthy, peaceful, and entirely independent of him. Alice, Brooks said, his voice deep and raspy. He walked into the shop, his eyes fixed on her as if she might vanish if he looked away. Hello, Brooks, Alice said. She didn't step back this time. She didn't need to. The distance between them wasn't physical anymore. It was a vast, unbridgeable chasm of her own indifference. Brooks walked up to the counter, standing beside a weeping Bryant. He pulled the small, blue velvet box from his pocket and opened it, revealing the flawless, sparkling pear-cut diamond ring. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Brooks said, his voice trembling with an emotion he had never allowed himself to show before. I was blind, Alice. I let Michelle manipulate me because she was weak, and I thought you were strong enough to bear anything. I took your love for granted, but I haven't worn the cedarwood cologne since the day you left. I bought a new house. I canceled all the contracts with Michelle's family. I will do whatever it takes to earn you back. He pushed the ring toward her. Alice looked down at the diamond. It was beautiful, expensive, and completely meaningless. Brooks, Alice said, looking up to meet his icy gray eyes, which were now filled with a desperate, pleading warmth. Do you remember the first high heels you bought me when I was 18? Brooks nodded quickly. Yes. They were red silk pumps. You wore them to my freshman gala. And my heels were bleeding by the end of the night, Alice said. Do you remember what you told me when I asked if we could leave early because my feet hurt? Brooks's expression stiffened. He searched his memory, a cold sweat breaking out on his neck. You told me, Alice said, her voice devoid of anger, that everyone was looking at us, and that a proper lady doesn't ruin her partner's night over a little blister. You told me to bear it. Brooks felt as if a physical blow had landed on his chest. He stumbled back a half step. For 10 years, Brooks, I bore it, Alice said softly. I bore the blisters, the neglect, the coldness, and the humiliation. I thought that if I was strong enough, if I was understanding enough, you would eventually see me. But the truth is, you only like things that are broken and needy, like Michelle. You don't know how to love someone who is whole. I can learn, Brooks cried, his composure completely shattering. He reached out, his fingers desperately brushing against hers on the counter. Alice, please, don't do this to me. I love you. I've always loved you. No, Alice said, gently but firmly pulling her hand away. You loved the security of having someone who would never leave you, no matter how badly you treated her. But that girl is gone. She died the night she tore up that slip of paper. She looked at both of them, the two men who had defined her youth, who had held her heart in their hands and repeatedly dropped it to catch someone else's tears. I have my mother's earrings back, Alice said, her voice final and clear. That is the only thing from my past that I care to keep. Please leave my shop now. If you don't, I will call the local police, and I'm sure a public disturbance charge in a small town won't look good on your record, Mr. Brooks. The rain outside began to fall harder, drumming a steady, relentless beat against the glass storefront. Bryant looked at the black umbrella by the door, then at Alice's calm, resolute face. He knew with absolute certainty that if he picked up that umbrella and walked out, she would never look back. The girl who used to cry in his passenger seat, who used to call him when she was lonely, was gone forever. He had traded a lifetime of genuine, unconditional love for the cheap thrill of being needed by a manipulator. I'm sorry, Alice, Bryant whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. He turned, his head bowed, and walked out into the cold drizzle, leaving the black umbrella behind. Brooks stood alone at the counter. He looked at the pear-cut ring, then at Alice. Is there really nothing left? He asked, his voice dead and empty. Nothing, Alice said. Brooks slowly closed the velvet box. He slipped it back into his pocket.
He
Wanted to say something else, to threaten, to plead, to bargain, but as he looked into her clear, tranquil eyes, he realized he had no power here. Alice was no longer playing their game. She had stepped off the board entirely. Without another word, Brooks turned and walked out of the shop. Alice watched through the glass as the two men walked down the wet sidewalk, their shoulders hunched against the coastal wind, eventually disappearing into the gray fog of the Pacific. Arthur walked out from the back workshop, carrying a fresh pot of hot tea.
he
Looked at the empty counter, then at Alice. Are you all right, Alice? Alice turned to him, a soft, beautiful smile spreading across her face.
It was.
The brightest, most genuine smile she had worn in 10 years. I'm perfect, Arthur, she said, her voice light and free. She picked up her burnishing tool, pulled her magnifying visor back down over her eyes, and sat back down at her workbench. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside the small shop, Alice was finally
Warm.